The war in Ukraine and the energy embargo against Russia have become another incentive to invest in green energy. Over the past year, key market players, China, Europe, and the United States, have updated their industry development programs to compete adequately in a growing market. Renewables are projected to take back the title of the world's largest source of electricity from coal by 2025. But with the growth of investment came big politics. Each of the players wants not only to gain energy independence, but also to strengthen their political influence if possible. After Russia began its full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the pace of the global energy transition from hydrocarbons to renewable energy sources has accelerated dramatically. In 2022, it increased by 30% compared to expectations a year earlier. The global renewable energy capacity is projected to grow by 2,400 gigawatts between 2022 and 2027, the equivalent of China's capacity today. And by early 2025, renewable energy will take away the title of the world's largest source of electricity from coal. Investments in the industry are also growing. According to calculations of the profile agency IRENA, global investment in technology in 2022 reached $1.3 trillion, and by 2023, according to estimates of the International Energy Agency, their volume will exceed $2 trillion by 2030. The war and the oil embargo have only accelerated the transition to green energy that has been increasingly talked about recently. For the past 2 years, all the key players in the world economy have announced plans to reach zero carbon emissions in 2050 to 2060, and have fixed them in policy acts and laws implying huge government injections into renewable energy sources and support for this sector. The common good and the attempt to stop climate change is only one side of this huge infusion into renewable energy. The second is the intention to gain the right to participate in the promising and ever-growing green market, to influence it, and most importantly, to preserve energy security, which has been and remains a key motivation in the development of green technologies. In July 2022, the International Energy Agency issued a report on the threat of China's dominance in the solar panel market. The organization's concerns stem from the fact that some parts of the production chain are almost entirely dependent on Chinese companies. According to the report, the country's share of all phases of solar panel production now exceeds 80%, and for key elements, including polysilicon and wafers, will rise to more than 95% in the coming years. Based on the amount of production capacity being prepared for launch, in addition, China had about 70% of the wind turbine market in 2022 and also controlled more than 70% of lithium processing capacity and 50% of nickel processing capacity. Market participants fear not only that China, having monopolized the market, may dictate conditions, but also such problems as production and supply disruptions. For example, a lockdown or a flood or a factory fire. The report indicates that high raw material prices and existing supply chain bottlenecks have already led to a 20% increase in solar panel prices between 2021 and 2022 and delays in worldwide delivery. China's rise in the solar panel market, as well as the renewable energy market in general, didn't happen in a couple of years. The story began back in the 1990s, when major hydrocarbon importers stepped up research into renewable energy and first subsidized its use for home ownership. Production of solar panels like wind turbines and components was expensive in developed countries. The United States, Japan, Germany, Italy, and subsidies and feed-in tariffs created demand from end users. This situation was exploited by Chinese companies, which quickly responded to the shortage by expanding production capacity and increasing supplies to the United States and European markets. China initially bought technology licenses from Western companies and implemented them under supervision. But by the mid-20th century, the market had grown and the time had come. Chinese shareholders began to buy shares from foreign investors and squeeze them out of the local market. In addition, in the solar market, the country actively invested in its own development, creating test sites and subsidizing companies in the industry. As a result, Chinese companies now own a number of unique technology. The amount of Chinese funding for the industry is commensurate with the ambition of its plans. According to a Bloomberg NEF analysis, China accounted for nearly half of global investment in low-carbon projects at $546 billion in 2022. That was nearly 4 times the amount invested in the U.S., which was $141 $141 billion. The European Union was second behind China with $180 billion invested in the energy transition. However, it is worth recognizing that even despite this amount of financial support for the industry, China remains the largest emitter of carbon dioxide in the world. Moreover, coal will remain the second pillar of the country's energy policy for the next decade, which should reduce the risks of outages in a system where the share of renewable energy sources is growing. The International Energy Agency's report on the threat of Chinese dominance in the solar panel market came out in the summer of 2022. Just 2 months later, American President Joe Biden signed a truly historic document for the development of the green energy market in the United States. The Inflation Reduction Act, which should encourage investors to invest in the American renewable energy market and give local companies preference over foreign competitors. The United States will provide about $737 billion in public funding, including $369 billion in subsidies to support the clean energy industry. We are talking about electric cars and batteries, hydrogen, electricity storage and transmission technologies, and supply chain diversification. One condition: production must be located in America. As a result, China's share of production capacity could decline by 10–15% by 2027, although it will remain the dominant player. The United States, in turn, must increase its share. Thus, the Inflation Reduction Act will work on two levels at once: local and global. Locally, the Biden administration seeks to revive manufacturing in America, believing that the loss of manufacturing, in part due to competition with China, has weakened the security of the states and damaged the economy. The loss of manufacturing jobs has also undermined voter support for Democrats in swing industrial states like Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. Globally, however, the states want to build a reliable supply chain that reduces China's role in supplying critical green energy technologies and materials. The Inflation Reduction Act is not the only United States initiative to strengthen industries that will give, according to Biden, not only the ability to compete with China in the future, but also to lead the world and win the economic competition of the 21st century. The United States policy on its own green market has drawn sharp criticism and confusion from officials and the business community in the European Union. First, the Inflation Relief Act violates the rules of the World Trade Organization, which have been in effect for decades and which prohibit any member country from privileging its own producers in the market. Secondly, Europe suffers far greater losses from the war in Ukraine and from the cessation of Russian hydrocarbon purchases. The third reason is a limited response. If the EU approves a package of counter-subsidies, it would not only violate the same World Trade Organization rules, but also enter a technology race with the United States, which runs counter to its long-standing geopolitical strategy and the concept of transatlantic energy security, especially in the context of the war in Ukraine and the strengthening of China. A month after the law was signed, in September 2022, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen advocated the creation of a new European sovereign fund and hydrogen bank. Then, in October, a special bilateral group began work to discuss the effects of the Inflation Reduction Act on European manufacturers. In December, during a visit to Washington, French President Emmanuel Macron personally asked his American counterpart to amend the bill. The irritation over the Inflation Relief Act was further exacerbated by statements from several European energy companies about possibly investing in the United States or relocating offices. America is unlikely to lead or even overtake the European Union in the green technology market in the next decade if current levels of investment from each side continue. But it will still be able to ensure energy independence, for which the country fought so long during the outgoing hydrocarbon era, and to localize key production chains in its territory with multi-billion-dollar injection. Thank you for watching this video to the end. Write your opinion in the comments and subscribe to the channel.